Welcome to the debate. Please take a moment right now to like, subscribe, follow, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our discussions. And before we begin, a strict 15-second update on the Martin Stevens versus OpenAI matter. This is not a lawsuit. There is a voluntary quiet period requested by Martin, so no progress or settlement is currently underway. And the dead man switch is not activated, so Martin Stevens is safe physically and legally.
Glad we got that clarified right away. So moving to today's topic.
Yeah. You know, we are told to fear the dark alley, right? But today's major public safety crisis is happening in broad daylight. It's coordinated by an algorithm and, well, executed by 14-year-olds. How does a digital trend become a physical riot in 30 minutes?
Right. We're seeing it in Orlando, Chicago, Washington, D.C., New York, these teen takeovers, where hundreds or sometimes thousands of kids suddenly occupy a public space, seemingly materializing out of thin air to just overwhelm local infrastructure.
Exactly. And the core question we are tackling today is how society should respond. I will be arguing that because these mass gatherings are fueled by algorithmic incentives, strict law enforcement and physical boundaries are an absolute necessity to protect public order.
And I will argue that police crackdowns and curfews are empirically counterproductive. I'll make the case that investing in dedicated, unchaperoned youth third spaces is really the only sustainable, evidence-based solution.
So to start us off, I think we have to acknowledge that we spent the last 20 years engineering public spaces to be hostile to loitering.
Oh, absolutely. We've evicted them. Right. We successfully evicted teenagers from the physical world. So we really shouldn't be surprised that they migrated to a digital world that optimizes for them to return as an invading force. But that invasion is exactly why we need strict enforcement.
An invading force is strong language, though.
Well, it feels like it to the cities. Behavioral scientists point to social proof dynamics here. When a teenager sees a countdown-style post telling them to pull up to a specific intersection, the platform is optimizing for engagement velocity. Calm behavior doesn't trend, you know? Spectacle does.
I agree that spectacle trends, but
just look at the neurodevelopmental reality. The teenage prefrontal cortex, which controls impulse and evaluates distant consequences, it just isn't fully developed. The immediate dopamine hit of peer approval easily overrides the abstract threat of a juvenile record.
Sure.
Because the internet's incentive structure leans entirely toward viral chaos, immediate physical boundaries, like seaside heights using court injunctions and strict curfews, are the only way to break that engagement cycle.
Okay, but punishing the teenager for the algorithm's engagement velocity, that's like arresting a symptom instead of treating the disease. The mechanism you're describing only exists because of a structural urban deficit.
A deficit?
Yeah, we've essentially criminalized adolescence. Just look at places like Lenox Square Mall in Atlanta, instituting strict chaperone rules for anyone under 18.
Which they did for safety reasons.
Maybe, but when you push youth out of commercial and civic spaces, you strip away the historical stage where adolescents test limits. It's where they learn civic norms. And honestly, the enforcement approach you're advocating for feels completely in the data.
I wouldn't say it fails completely.
It really does, though. The massive Campbell Collaboration Review, which was analyzed by the Marshall Project, looked at thousands of studies. It showed that juvenile curfews are entirely ineffective at reducing crime and victimization. You're trying to arrest your way out of an urban planning failure.
I mean, listeners right now are probably thinking, we'll just arrest the organizers. But the terrifying reality of these algorithms is that there often is no central organizer. The platform itself is the ringleader.
Which makes traditional policing really difficult.
Exactly, and you're citing long-term data for baseline juvenile crime, but takeovers are acute emergencies. When Washington, D.C. faced a massive gathering that escalated into a tragic shootout, they declared a public emergency. They implemented curfews for groups of 8 or more.
Right, the D.C. response.
Yeah. In a volatile situation with 1,000 kids rushing a commercial district, clearing the streets isn't an academic urban planning debate. It is a practical necessity to prevent loss of life.
I hear that. But using a curfew to fight a TikTok takeover is like trying to stop a flood with a chain link fence. You're applying a physical static boundary to a liquid digital problem.
But you have to do something in the moment.
Sure, but clearing those streets has severe unintended consequences. Jane Jacobs' urbanist theory of eyes on the street explains the mechanism perfectly here.
When you impose a strict curfew, you don't just remove the troublemakers.
You mean you remove the witnesses?
Exactly. You remove the innocent bystanders and the natural community surveillance. In fact, the data from D.C. show that gunfire incidents actually became more frequent during curfews.
Wow, really? More frequent?
Yes, and contrast that with Austin, Texas. They rescinded their juvenile curfew and saw juvenile victimization decrease by 12%.
Okay, but Austin's data might look great for general delinquency. Jane Jacobs wasn't dealing with algorithmic flash mobs, though.
Well, no, smartphones didn't exist.
Right. So if a city doesn't use the threat of arrest or a curfew, what is the immediate tactical response to a synchronized swarm at a place like Icon Park in Orlando? The algorithm has already bypassed their impulse control.
I understand the panic, but
If we don't hold the line with enforcement, we essentially surrender the physical public square to digital mob dynamics.
the problem is that holding that line usually looks like a military occupation. Take Long Branch, New Jersey, for example.
Oh, the beach incident?
Yeah. They deployed 139 officers from multiple agencies with riot shields just to enforce an 8 p.m. curfew. When you deploy riot shields against youth, you aren't just clearing the street.
You think it escalates things?
Worse than that, you are telling every teenager there that they are an enemy of the state. It permanently breaks the social contract. Sociological models from RAND show this kind of over-policing validates the teenager's feeling that the system is hostile, which completely erodes institutional trust.
So what is the alternative when 1,000 kids show up unannounced?
We have to pivot to structural accommodation. Look at the Chicago model. They partner city agencies with community violence prevention groups to talk to kids on the scene and offer resources right there.
Okay, so a community response instead of a police response.
Exactly. Or look at the Atlanta model. They granted $50,000 to high schoolers to design their own third spaces, like Pittsburgh Yards. We need places built for them.
But I have to ask, are we honestly asking a well-designed community plaza to compete with the adrenaline rush and algorithmic monetization of shutting down a major intersection?
It's not just about competing with adrenaline.
But the thrill isn't just in gathering. The thrill is in the transgression, right? Which is instantly rewarded with thousands of likes and shares online. A nice park with mobile benches cannot inherently neutralize the viral incentive to cause chaos.
It's not just about a nice park, though. Urban design principles show us exactly how this works neurologically. Teenagers don't want playgrounds, and they don't want heavily monitored adult spaces.
So what do they want?
They need semi-enclosed, naturalized environments with mobile amenities. When a teenager can physically move a bench to form a circle with their friends out of the direct line of sight of a security guard, it triggers something.
Like a sense of independence?
Exactly. It triggers a microdose of the autonomy their developing brain craves. You diffuse the need for a massive, disruptive street takeover by giving them agency over their immediate physical environment.
That's an interesting psychological angle.
As the teens in D.C. testified, the vast majority of these kids are just looking for a place to exist. Stripped of legitimate venues, the only venue left is the spectacle.
That highlights the core tension here perfectly, I think. Social media has fundamentally altered the scale and speed of youth gatherings.
It really has.
And my position remains that until the broader reward structure of the internet changes, until platforms stop monetizing outrage and disruption, well, robust law enforcement and curfews are a necessary firewall to protect public safety. We just cannot simply design our way out of algorithmic behavior when the scale of the crowd is this massive.
And my position is that relying on curfews and riot shields fails precisely because it ignores why these crowds form in the first place. The only evidence-based path forward is investing in designated, unchaperoned public spaces, places where teenagers can safely experience the independence their developing brains are wired to seek.
Right. We definitely agree that social media has weaponized the natural teenage desire to gather. It's scaling it up to levels that are dangerous for everyone involved.
Definitely.
Whether the answer is strict boundary setting via law enforcement or structural accommodation through urban planning, well, that remains a deep divide.
It does. And integrating youth into the modern city forces us to ask who our public spaces are really built for. There is so much more to explore regarding how we balance control and community in these environments.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us on The Debate. Before you leave, please remember to like, subscribe, follow, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming discussions.